Hello, hello, hello. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with a delayed stream, some technical difficulties, but I'm excited to see some folks in the chat already. That's fantastic. And I'm excited to hang out with you a little bit. The good news is that Nilofer and I did have an amazing conversation, even though we couldn't stream it live. But I was able to figure out a way to replay that conversation like it was meant to show up here. So I thought for a couple of minutes we'd hang out here and chat, say hello in the stream chat, and then I'm going to kick over to the conversation that Nilofer and I had. So I do see some new faces in the chat. A Bridgewater, J.M. Cornian, thank you for being here. Who else is hanging out with us today? I would love it if you jumped in the chat and said hello. Vince, what's up, Vince? Thank you for being here. That's fantastic. How's everybody's Friday going? Hopefully your Friday's been going well. I know it's been, as many days are, kind of a roller coaster, but here we are, and I think this will be really, really good. Tara Gibbs, hello, how are you? Thank you for being here. Super glad. For those of you that are just tuning in, gonna hang out for just a couple of minutes, say hello, greet everybody coming in, make it sort of like an old school meetup, or people just kind of wander in. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat, who you are, where you're joining the stream from, would love that. Are you coming from Twitter? Are you coming from the email that I sent out earlier today? Let us know where you're coming from, how you found the stream, and also where in the world you are. I know we've got an international group of folks hanging out. I'm thinking in about a minute or two, I'm going to kick things off my conversation with my friend Nilofer. For those of you who aren't familiar with Nilofer, she is many things. I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a minute, but most recently, the two things I'm most excited to share of hers is her contribution. She wrote the foreword for the Tiny MBA, which includes some stories from her experience in working with other creative folks and leadership and decision making and things like that. And she also has this awesome column called At Work, atwork.substack.com, where she's writing about those experiences in sort of troubleshooting business, but through a very specific lens we're going to get into in this conversation. Yeah, Nick, we hit affiliate, I want to say it was a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to have to get you in here to show me what I can actually do with affiliate status. I'm not even sure where you see that on your screen, but yeah, Twitch affiliate, rock and roll. Nick, you just gave me 100 something. I don't know what that does. You're going to have to tell me. Cool. Well, I see we've got about a few more folks coming in. I'm going to hang out in the chat room while we're having this conversation. This conversation is recorded. It just ended less than an hour ago, so this is still fresh. You gave me $1. You are super generous. Thank you for that, Nick. Fantastic. Cool. Let's jump into this. This is also a little bit of an experiment in me being able to play back conversations that I've had with guests. So I'm gonna get things started and hang out with y'all here in the chat. Here we go. Cool. So before we get into some of the things that we want to talk about today, Nilofer, I want you to tell us a little bit about how you like to describe yourself, especially in the context of business. You and I have now a friendship that goes back a number of years. You interviewed me for your most recent book, which we'll talk about a bit. And as we've gotten to know each other over the years, I think we found some really interesting and personally really, I've found really nourishing common views on business. But you have a really interesting background that's hard to describe of how I think you came to some of those views. So for the folks that are tuning in and don't know your name other than the contributions that you wrote from my book, how do you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I actually have a really hard time with the question, just to be like 100% right on that. But so I think about myself as a former operator, meaning I have 25 years of shipping products and helping other teams ship products. So I was the first one who shipped the first WYSIWYG software, for example. So Go Live, which a lot of people still remember in the webosphere. And in order to sell Go Live, I actually coded like Time Warner's first website, just to give you
Wow.
like one little
I
funny
didn't
little
know
story.
that.
And by the way, if you go through like, what is that thing where you can go in the
The
back
Wayback Machine.
Wayback Machine, you can actually find it. And I'm like, wow, I really didn't understand what the hell I was doing, but lovely. And I also introduced Apple's first web server, which was the first like commercially fully packaged unit. So I have like a real deep background in shipping things. And I think that's important because I always come at it from how do real people do real things? Right. And I'm
Yeah.
always like, and how do we get it done? Like I'm a big like less about process, less about people, all about getting it done. So that's, I think, important for my context for what we're going to talk about. And then since then, so since all this operating background, I've also written 3 books. The common theme through the book is how do we get ideas from anyone, quite possibly everyone, to count. So all those ideas that are latent in the system, how do we get them connected? Because innovation always comes from left field. And left
Mm,
field is usually the person we're ignoring the most. And so I have this basic belief of value creation can grow as soon as we figure out how to fix it. So my first book was about how to do that within an organization. Second book, which got me more known, was the one about how do you break the perimeter between us and them in in the larger world, which you and I is probably why I started first tracking you. And then the last one was about how does a network system work of people being able to add value to one another without squashing one another. And that's why I came and found you, because I really saw you doing that in the work that you did with Indie Hall.
that's
So
awesome.
hopefully
And
that's a good context.
it's amazing context and includes things that I didn't know. Like I knew your operator-ness from a bunch of the companies, well-known companies that you worked for, but I didn't know the depth of your involvement with the actual production and some of the hands-on work. That's amazing. I don't know how we didn't talk about that before.
Yeah, right. So sometimes people like to use the couple like facts that kind of show who I am also in the larger sort of credentialing world. Worked at Apple, etc. Shipped $18 billion worth of products in my career, which
Wow.
that B is really tough to kind of get your hands around. But was like in the room when got a chance to convince Nokia CEO to sell. Was in the room to help defend against Microsoft with Symantec and help preserve that business. So like in really interesting rooms in my career. And then since then have been named like one of the top thinkers in the world, one of the top HR thinkers in the world, as well as management thinkers. And then funny little side note that a lot of people know me by, but they don't know they know me by. So you've heard my ideas, even if you haven't heard about me, because most people have heard the phrase sitting is the smoking of our generation. And that phrase, which I created, has been quoted 399 million times, according to Google. So just some like funny little factoids about me that most people don't know.
We're not always in control of the things we're known for or what we've contributed. But sometimes you put them out into the world, and into the world they go.
Yes.
So, all right. So there's a lot in there. One of the things that I love about your work, and you talked a bunch in your intro about, you've done the operator work, but you also see the operation from within systems. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that systems level thinking is where a lot of people who have the creative, the categorical maker skills, so to speak, they may understand systems within certain contexts, but the human systems, the bigger systems that are at play, are often where I think folks fall short. And where you and I think, share some common views from talking with so many people in business, working with so many different kinds of businesses, is learning how to spot these patterns, like these big ideas that you have put into the world and you've shaped and you've helped put in other people's heads and hands. Those didn't just come out of the ether. Those came from you observing patterns in work, in observing patterns in people, what they're doing, what they're not doing. Is there something in your background, your personal story, maybe not even your professional story, that if you think about where you learned to be a pattern watcher, where you learned and honed those skills to realize, oh, this thing is showing up as as a pattern, and those patterns indicate there is some system at play, even if it's not obvious or explicit, where did that skill come from for you?
It's so funny. I wasn't going to go there when we had talked about what we might talk about, and I was thinking of something else when you first raised it. But can I tell you the real deal?
Yeah, I would love that.
So I was raised in a really abusive world. Um, and you know that phrase Leonard Cohen said, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
Yeah.
So from the time I was like between ages 1 and 2, I was left alone in my home for like 10 hours at a time.
Wow.
And with a dirty diaper on and a bowl of food in the corner like you would a dog. From the age of 2 and 4 to 4.5, I lived in a slum, which was where the family I was left with lived. And it meant that you used a communal toilet. You had to worry about your safety in every possible situation. And then I came to America and to get reconnected to my family of origin. And my mother is an extremely upset person and chose to use violence against her children as one of her coping mechanisms. And so I would watch like Child Protective Services drive up to the house, have the conversation, and then drive away. And I'm like, what is it I need to change in this system that gets that person to do something different? And
Wow.
I think I've always been like trying to figure out how to survive,
Mm.
right? Let alone thrive. I think a part of me always wanted to thrive, but with the initial part, like just survive. And I was always looking at something is so messed up. And I think as a child, you do know what love looks like, and you also know what hate looks like, and you know that you're being raised by a sociopath. Like, you know all that. You don't know
Yeah.
it, the words of it yet, but you totally know, right? And so I think I learned that, like, the pattern part of it pretty early from just watching, like, over there you're doing this, and over here we're doing this, and how can I get that to happen over here? And I was always that sort of kid.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then going into work and watching people uh, dismiss people and ignore people and walk away and stuff. Still to this day, I'm like, gosh, this is so old. It's old.
First, thank you for sharing that really personal story. And I can imagine for a lot of folks hearing something like that, and I'm thinking about it through my own, experiences growing up, obviously very different in a lot of ways, but thinking about, I think for folks who maybe even go through those experiences and then for a lot of reasons, forget them or choose to ignore them, is super common. And I think it's really interesting and powerful to hear you reflect on those skills being, I agree, they're innate. They're there to protect us in some ways, but then to realize that somewhere along the way, either you chose or had the opportunity to not unlearn them,
Mm.
and then to bring them into your adult life, your professional life, and things like that is pretty incredible.
Well, and most of us, we defer to power because we defer to those in power and think, well, this is just the way things are. Because the idea, by the way, of shaping that seems insane. Like, and by the way, kind of is at some level. And so I'm being real about that. Uh, but I think it just makes it easier, right? Like, a part of us really does want to be the stormtrooper, because then it's clear what outfit you wear. It's clear whose side you're on. You're winning, by the way. At that moment, it looks like you're winning, right? You have enough people sitting next to you so you feel like you belong. Like, there's a lot of reasons why we do that other behavior.
I had a tweet go slightly viral a couple of weeks ago, to the point where this phrase that I mentioned in the tweet, we realized we had to create a like text graphic similar to the text graphics that are in the Tiny MBA. So Hannah, who did all those designs of some of the favorite quotes from the book, I was like, okay, people love this. We need a version of this, an expressive version of this that we can have, because people want to wear it, is really what it was. And the phrase was emotionally unemployable.
Yes.
And I dug into that a little bit in this thread, and I just pulled it up on my screen to make sure I wasn't missing anything. But I was really deriving from this, there are some things about me that are not unique to me, but that I know about myself, that I'm a great worker, but I'm a terrible employee. The reason I'm bringing this up is your point about, we the idea of shaping where power comes from is not something that I think a lot is default to a lot of people. But when I shared this, I got somebody direct messaged me and goes, "This spoke to me in a way that I was not expecting it to.
Mm,
Do you?" Then I said, "Why do you think that is? Why
mm,
does this phrase of being emotionally unemployable connect with me? Is there something in your background or experience that maybe we have in common?" And I was like, "I don't know. Let me just talk a little bit more and let's find out." And I said, "I think part of it was that I never accepted that the adults in the room were smarter or better than me."
mm,
And that
mm.
notion of
Deferring to power,
deferring
right?
to authority,
Right.
for whatever reason, just never sat with me. And that, it informs the kind of trouble that I got into, trouble, scare quote, that I got into as a kid. I was never doing damage, but I was often not even challenging authority, but just asking a question that authority wasn't prepared to be asked.
Mm,
And sort of digging into how these things show up later in our life. And now I'm a professional and I love working with people and and helping them solve problems. But I find myself deeply challenged when working with people who don't sit down to just question the default.
yeah. Right. Can I actually slow that one down for just a second?
Please, let's
Because
do
you've
it.
just used some beautiful language, and I'm sort of, so this notion about authority is so interesting to me. And in fact, I have a question in my inbox that I think will become a column. I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk about that too, how I think about columns. But the question was basically someone saying, "Hey, listen, I want to write a book by myself, like with my own like headline. Here's all the things I've done to get ready." And the list included getting out of the Midwest and going to Harvard. It included getting a job at one of the big consulting firms. It included working for these national name brand organizations, each for like 18 months at a time, so that she could kind of check off these lists. And then she even wrote, or ghost wrote, I should say, but kind of co-wrote with her boss, who's one of the most misogynistic people you will ever meet. She ghost wrote / got her name on the book jacket so that she could get credit. And so she says, "I've done all these things. What gives me the authority to write my own book?" And I was just like, I don't know if you can see the paradox of what's coming. I bet you can. But here's what was going on, right? What she was actually doing was following the checklist of who has organizational power and social status. And let me do all those things. And I'm slowing us down because the word authority is so interesting here, right? Is it external or internal? Where's
Yeah.
the locus of control? So authority, it comes from authoring, which is to be the story of your own life,
Ooh, that's good.
right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
here's what we're doing though. We're looking to be authorized by someone else and seeking organizational power or social status. So that's why I actually think about authority as being this thing that can, like, if you draw the Venn diagram, there's, organizational power and social status, and there's like some overlap there. And then there's authority, which is also overlapping those two things, but it's also got its own like part that's not covered about power and status. That is just true independently of whether or not other people see it as true. And that's what I heard you saying, which is I want to use my own authority to influence the things that matter in the world. And if I have to get some organizational power and some social status to do that, cool. But I don't want to give up my voice, that part that's mine, to submit to all of the other stuff.
Yeah. All of that resonates with me really deeply, and I think connects with patterns that I've seen and heard in the folks who listen to this podcast, who read our newsletter, who take our courses, who buy and respond to the Tiny MBA. The common theme among these people are, it's not that I can't work for other people, it's that I can't keep working and not and continue giving up that voice, right?
Yeah.
To not be in control of what I create, or to have some sense of connection to what I create, creating impact for other people, is like, apart from the "my boss is terrible, get me out of here," which is definitely a real category of why people choose or desire to go out and do their own thing. And I think that's real, but I also think it's relatively surface level compared to this deep internal sense of satisfaction or lack thereof from knowing that you can put things into the world, but constantly having somebody else's hands be the ones on the steering wheel, and not knowing or having a sense that there are things that you can position or gather or organize to make it so that people would want to pay attention to you, value your thoughts or opinions, value your work in the way that you feel like it should be, but connecting the dots between I know it could be, should be, I'm seeing other people do it, and here are the specific steps that I need to do, is where I think things break down, or people misconstrue what works or what is effective because they're kind of cargo culting their way through what other people are doing instead of understanding or seeing all of the layers of invisible work that went into creating the result that they saw, that they seek out and they want to create for themselves.
Yeah, so we're talking about such an, I mean, like I could just slow down and listen to you for like an hour and just take apart like each of those sentences and talk to you about what each sentence meant to me. But I'm going to do one like larger frame, right? Which is we have eyes that look out at the world and we think, gosh, I want to be like Alex, or gosh, I want to, and we're doing this thing. And for some reason, we can't seem to notice that, by the way, our job is not to look out there to figure out what it is I want to do, which is not to say egocentric, like, but to claim what is it you value requires you to carve out that meaning. It's not like you pick it up from a puzzle piece or you find a rock and go, this is what I was looking for. It's not out there. It's this thing that you figure out from what is it that matters to me? What is it that matters to me that, by the way, will get you to figure out what is the way in which I can contribute to that, which is different than this competitive construct or comparative construct to be like, I want to be like Alex, right? And because, but I think there is something appealing about having role models that say, I see what Alex is doing. What is it that I'm valuing, right? That's a different word than the doing part. It's the, what is it I value about what he's doing that I also value? So I can see it inside me, this resonance that's happening.
Totally. And that sounds like it's either very akin to or precisely what onlyness is. Is that fair?
It is. And in fact, you'll remember the story I wrote about you in The Power of Onlyness, right? And can I, for the sake of the audience listening in, can I do a little recap of what I
Please.
wrote?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I was about to ask you to.
It feels weird to kind of talk about you to you.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. So the way I think about onlyness is like that singular but not separate thread that connects you to the world. So what is it you care about? So how do you claim it? Then how does that put you in community with people so that you can go do things together, right? So it's care, community, outcomes kind of thing. And so think about it like the drop in the ocean, you can see the ripples kind of going, okay. And the reason I came and found you, I had been studying 400 case studies over the course of many years. I was tracking each one, believe it or not. And so I'm one of those like insane people that never stops. You know, I have a friend who says I read the internet for everybody else. I'm like, I kind of am that person. Like I'm always studying this multivariate kind of thing. And I was studying different examples to see who was doing this thing about understanding themselves and understanding therefore how they fit into the world. And because what I was trying to teach is as we belong as ourselves, we become more of ourselves. And as we become more of ourselves, we belong. And so I was looking for a community construct that was holding that. And so I picked you as the starting story of chapter 4 to talk about that thread. And you'll remember that the quote I use to contextualize your story was Parker Palmer's work of long before a community assumes a shape, it has to exist within you. And then I told the story of you kind of wandering around Philadelphia, going to all these like crappy IT type meetings, you know, thinking, are these my people? It's like the duck who's like, are you my mom? You know, and are you my mom? Are you my mom? And you were going around to all these different tech type communities and kind of going, are you my people? And really not finding them. And one of the little stories you told, which the editor, by the way, wanted to take out. And I was like, that's so relevant to the story. And he's like, how is it relevant? I'm like, how are you not reading what I'm writing? Little side thing about editors. Anyway, so you had said you had gone in like business attire, and I'm using air quotes, business attire, like the shirt and the jacket kind of thing. And then at some point you're like, this is so not working for me, by the way. I'm going to give it one last shot. And you showed up with your sleeves rolled up so that your tats were visible. And you showed up as yourself. And then all of a sudden, like there was like one person in that room and one person in that room who's like, hey, I see you. Let's go have a beer, you know, kind of thing. And you gathered, it's such an interesting word, gather. You gathered together these people who were longing for that community, that place where they belonged. But they themselves, and I'm sort of saying it about you, right? But I'm not being like, I hope you hear this with great love. But until you celebrated that spot in the world only one stood, you weren't celebrating that place where you already belonged.
Right.
So that you could go be in community. And it was this beautiful vignette that kind of completely captured, you know, the short story of this gathering. And then of course, Indie Hall ended up blossoming out of that. And now some of the work that you've been doing since then. So I hope that wasn't too uncomfortable to describe you. Back to you.
I don't mind at all. What's interesting about how you describe that, and I think maybe how this connects to a lot of the folks in our community around stacking the bricks, is how and why people don't trust themselves to be themselves, when in fact it's the only self they can really, really be for the long term, right? And, you know, in that momentary expression of literally and figuratively rolling up the sleeves, it took me trusting myself to be myself. And I look at that in people in far less potentially intimidating, although maybe that's in the eye of the beholder. But like, I watch folks who show up in an online watering hole. They go to a forum or a mailing list or a chat room or a LinkedIn group or whatever it is. And what they're trying to do is figure out where they fit in that group, instead of showing up and going, who am I? And what can I bring to this group? How, if I trust myself to be myself, can I be seen as valuable, as useful, as trustworthy? And I think those are all foundations of community and business, right?
For sure. For sure. And I just want to be kind to those people who don't yet see it, right? Because here's the thing that's really hard. We often talk about it, and it's probably not easy for you to see because it's 10 years since that moment or something. It's been a while. But that moment where you're going, and I'm gonna have to use Mary Oliver's work, right? Where the geese are honking and they find each other, right? They honk back kind of thing. And then we find ourselves in that flock that we belong. The thing about, like, if we're doing the honk ourselves and no one honks back, we're like, if the tree fell in the forest, like, did it, you know, like, and no one was there to hear it, like, did it exist? And so we kind of start to question our own being. And the reason that's important, right, is most of the stuff we're taught, if you look at like how many books you and I probably read before we finally understood something different, was that you can do it. Like, how many books of you can be better, show some grit. I can like do headline after headline after headline of what those things are, right? Even originals, like all the thesis behind David and Goliath or originals, never really, and I'm putting big asterisks around that word never because I don't use things that emphatically, never talk about the social aspect of it. And so they suggest that, by the way, the 100% of the problem, if you're not finding your honk back, is you're not fucking doing your job, or you're not honking clearly enough, or whatever. And I'm like, dude, we are both individuals connected to a larger set of humanity. We are intrinsically valued that needs to be valued. Like those little loops, those little infinity loops that happen between those things do not happen in isolation.
Yeah.
And you did it because you managed to, like, at one of those meetings, show up and go honk, and somebody went honk, and you found one person, right? And then it started to grow. And so that process that looks, by the way, random, that's why I'm trying to, like, each of the stories in the book is really building on the next story.
Yeah.
And so I was like, Alex went honk and somebody went honk. Okay, now do you get that story? Now the next story that followed you, by the way, was a group of kids I was teaching at Stanford who every single time somebody asked them to honk, they were like, well, exactly how do you want me to honk? Because I want to do it the way you want me to.
Yeah. Talk about the systems that get drilled into us. Like that's a tough one to unlearn. Really tough one to unlearn.
And even you, like when you just said it, it's like so hard to remember who you were in that moment of how fucking insecure and scared and everything. And I mean that with great love and affection, right? Like where do we, like when we're sitting there going, roll up the sleeves. Like I can just picture this part of you, that moment. And like, and so I just want to kind of slow it down, not for the sake of torturing you, but to go, every single person has that
Yeah.
moment.
Yep. Yep.
And we
Yep.
don't even understand the full implication of what we're doing when we do it. And then we're like, oh my God, that's it. That was the thing, you know? And it's because we finally were listening to ourselves, which is a slowing down and a pace, right? To trust. I love that phrase. I actually wrote down, trust yourself to be yourself. Because
Yeah.
as you then be yourself, you also belong. Because you find that process, that little loop of you and us, you and us.
That feedback loop, I think, is one of the most understated, under-communicated, understood, I
Oh,
guess,
tell me about it. I mean, I wrote a book about
experiences.
it. I wrote an entire book about it, which, by the way, I think it's still fucking brilliant. And I think I've sold something like 12,000 copies so far. So
Yeah.
like fucking nothing. And you know why?
Yeah.
Because everyone reads that and they're like, oh, I already knew that, by the way. So if it's you already know it. But you don't actually really remember the moment. So you can't
Yeah.
teach it to anyone else because you don't remember it. And I decoded for each person, right, the thing. And because every other piece of noise we're getting in the marketplace is like, you can do it. And in fact, you should do it. You know, we're not talking about us.
And it tells us to, the mainstream notions around validation is like, just do it until you get the honk back. It never tells you how to analyze the absence of a feedback loop, which could include, and in many cases does include, you not being you not showing up as yourself for the people with whom you could connect with whom you could belong, and things like that.
Right. We betray ourselves so easily without even realizing we have, right?
The feedback loop also makes me think about the difference between writing your book Onlyness and your other books for that matter, which is like, you're obviously interacting with people that you're researching and talking to, but the feedback loop with your audience is long and slow and often frustratingly quiet. Compared to your newest project, the At Work column, which everybody needs to go check out, atwork.substack.com. Talk to me about the difference. Well, talk to me about how they're related. How is the Onlyness book related to the At Work column? And how are they related in different? And I'm going to plant the seed of the feedback loop being one of the pieces of it, but I have the hunch there's more.
Well, ever since the book came out, one of the things I realized was, even if you read it, the next time you ended up in your work situation, you are going to never be able to figure out how to apply it. And I mean that with, like, again, love towards me, that I tried to write down things that would be helpful, and love towards people that when they get in situations that they're torn between their values, or they're trying to figure out if they're longing for community, how do they get it where they're working, all the bullshit that happens, right? Like when someone steals your ideas or whatever. And I thought, wouldn't it be kind of interesting to do like an Onlyness in action kind of thing? And so it started with the fact, by the way, that my inbox is always full of people writing to me. And it's anyone who's known me, like from executives, whatever, like people write me here's the thing that just happened, and here's how I'm thinking about it. And they just, like, I don't know why, because I mean, this has happened for a gazillion years. People just send me these notes, and this is probably a bad thing to admit out loud, but I write back to just about everybody. And I always have. I just feel like that's an act of, because quite often it's like super personal notes of what they're struggling with. And so I feel like sort of like, I don't know. Anyway, I write back to almost everybody. And it occurred to me, like, people write back going, oh my God, if I had known this before, or if can I forward this to, and I'm like, what if that actually is it? And so I just connected those two dots when Paul had approached me back when he was working at Medium, if I wanted to be a regular columnist for him in a paid way. And he said he'd been reading my stuff for 5 years, and here's why. And the specific words he used is, I'd be remiss in not asking you, and I'm sorry, but anybody who can use that in a sentence, I just think that's like such a sweet way of approaching someone. I'd be remiss in not asking you. I'm pretty sure you won't say yes, but and we started working together, and he himself is trying to figure out how to live it. And so he ends up becoming both my first reader and my editor. And so that's how that project kind of came about. And then I purposely moved it away from my site, which is where I had been writing for quite some time. Like, I don't know, is it 15 years? It's some ridiculously long amount of time. I don't even want to like count because I feel old. And, but I've been blogging for a super long time. And I did it on a new project because I wanted to signal like, this is all we're gonna do, and recognize, and we're sort of doing obviously the entendre, right, of at work, that it's all in motion. We're all works in progress. And so it's about thinking about how to apply the only as construct at the moment you're actually facing it. And you actually, can I give credit that you actually were like, I was like, I'd been working on it for a little while. I had a couple little samples and I was thinking about doing it more. And I'd asked you because we were talking about something else. Probably it was this book that you just are releasing.
Yep.
And I said, hey, actually, since you're in my inbox, can I ask you a favor about this column I'm working on and blah, blah, blah. And you said, nobody actually wants to admit they're having a problem, which by the way is not true. They just want to admit it privately. But we all want to watch how it gets fixed because we can learn from it. And so you had actually given me the car crash analogy, which I loved and appreciated. And so that is really how I think about it, which is I'm helping that one person at that moment, essentially privately, right? And then I'm writing it in such a way knowing that other people can witness it and maybe learn from it and kind of help their perspective as they go along.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this model. And it's actually a piece of advice that I give to every creative person who gets the, hey, can I pick your brain questions about, their place in the industry, their skill, those kinds of things. And you're sort of torn between, I should be paid for my time, or at least paid is one way to be compensated. I should be compensated for my time. But I don't want to be a jerk and say no. And like throwing up a paywall feels weird depending on what the relationship is. And sometimes helping one person is exactly the thing that you need to get to the next, not to the next break, but like you never know how helping one person could be a lever for a thing in the future. And so like there's all these things swirling around, and like you, my inbox, whether it's co-working or business related, I get questions from people day in, day out. I also love responding. It's something I probably put too much time into, but I also come at it from the perspective of, this person thought to ask me. And if there's some way that we can both get value from this exchange, then it seems like I should at least try. And so the sort of process that I came up with was, if the person's asking a question that is so deeply nuanced and specific to their situation, that's probably consulting. And if I think that there's a situation where I can offer that, I will, and if it makes sense for them. But in most cases, people's questions and problems are not so unique to them that if the way I help them helps me think about the problem solving, and if the answer can be written down and communicated in a way that it helps more than just that one person, that is what I talk about. This is one of my favorite lessons in the Tiny MBA, is how two things actually. One is audience building is really just earning trust at scale, which means audience building is really just helping people at scale. And so building that system where helping one person can potentially help tens or hundreds or thousands of people over time, including future me when I get that same question a second time and I already have an article or a column or a podcast about it, that's just good leverage and systems. The other thing is this notion that I've been talking about from the book of being ruthlessly generous. And I think the way you describe your outlook on your inbox and people asking questions is, it's not that I want to out generous other people. It's that I want to look for ways to scale my generosity. And the fact that companies don't think about how to scale generosity, let alone people, is an interesting conundrum for me as I look at the business world more broadly. Is being generous can be highly strategic, and if you can scale it, even better. But the fact that companies who do have the resources to do it don't, I think, does a really interesting thing in terms of setting a bad example for individuals who then don't even consider it for themselves either.
Yeah, it's I love that idea of generosity. I want to suggest also that I'm also counter programming, right? So one of the things that's happening in the broader business world is this notion. In fact, Coinbase just is exemplifying it. in recent days, which is, in order for you to work for me, I'm going to tell you that you're quote unquote mission driven, but the mission driven is specific to making this company money. And if you're not in on that, if then get out. And I personally, by the way, every person who's not running from Coinbase, I'm like, wow, because the Coinbase CEO just literally said, I read his whole notes, basically said, we are totally mission driven and the mission is about the company. He actually said that. And I'm like, wow, that is a very narrow focus, my friend, because it means that I am literally here as your monkey to do whatever with, I can do just for you, which is in a super small dome of venture capitalized money, which is in a super small dome of how business works, which is in a super small dome, right? And I'm like, I think some of us want to live in bigger biospheres. And he has just finished telling you that he does not want you to bring any of those other things to work. And by the way, if you are someone who wants to disrupt quote unquote power, then get out. And so, because he's saying, I'm it. And I'm like, how fast could I find the door, right? And so the thing is, most people will look at that and say, well, I should be, here's the kind of dialogue that's going on inside people's heads, even if they don't hear it, right? I should be loyal. I'm lucky to have a job. These are great people. They mean the best thing. And by the way, the company's mission driven. It's doing crypto stuff, right? Which, by the way, is disrupting the financial market. And so I find it very funny that a guy who's trying to disrupt something so that he can make money off people traditionally unbanked or all that stuff is now saying, but don't disrupt anything else, people. Get on plan. Like, come here. Work for me.
Only my disruptions. No
only
other.
My disruption, right? And
man.
So the thing is, we're doing. You and I are both, and I think this is where what you claim puts you in community. What you and I are both doing in the work that we're doing, either through the beautiful new book that you just released, and all the work around onlyness, and why we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we tell you the stuff that lets you actually be in community, to not think about work as just a job, but to think about work as part of your vocation. To step back from that, to understand how to bring your full self, not just the conditioned self. So we're doing counter programming in a world, by the way, that 98, 99% of the messages are going to tell that Coinbase person that they should say, including, by the way, Paul Graham of all God-forsaken people, who will, totally say like, woohoo, this is the best thing because it's focusing people.
You invoked Voldemort's name on the podcast. Well done. Yeah, and I mean, what I was about to say, like, what a timely example, but like that just so happens to be the example this week. It's every week and every day that those stories are out there, but people aren't necessarily processing them through this lens. And I think it's one of the reasons I love your column so much, is because you do multiple things simultaneously and you do them with so much finesse and grace. And I know that a lot of hard work and editing goes into making that possible. But I think you combine the story of the day or week in some cases with a personal, often your story, if not somebody else's personal story, that is so deeply resonant. You've managed to find the piece of a story that creates so much potential to connect. And then you introduce a framework of all things, which is where I think the beauty of your approach to like management, leadership, and that style of learning is to come in and say, this isn't woo-woo magic. Like, there's a framework here and it's learnable and it's practicable. And to combine all of that with what you're talking about here, this counter programming, this notion of for every system that is pointing in one direction, you can choose the system that you're playing in, and it can keep going in that direction, or you can take it 90 degrees to the right or the left, or you can reverse it entirely, and that might actually be one of the most powerful things you can do. And when we were talking before this conversation, and actually you mentioned this in the most recent edition of the At Work column, which was all about the character and create. How do we even describe Elon Musk as but a character? Certainly in his own story, if not many of ours, you describe this flywheel energy that is sort of a systemic default, the assumptions that we keep carrying in a particular direction, and how your counter programming that you're describing feels like a way to intentionally contribute to at least creating a flywheel that creates some energy in the other direction, invites other people into that flywheel, encourages other people to make a choice that might create a flywheel of their own. I would love for you to unpack that flywheel energy analogy a little bit, whether it's connecting it to the Elon story or just encouraging folks to go read that, or sort of where did that flywheel notion come from for you, and how do you describe that?
Okay, so funny story. You're gonna just love this level of candor. So a friend had said to me, I'm thinking about buying a car. I sort of know enough to know that Elon's not quite the person I should give money to, but his is definitely the best, most green car and most, beautiful design. And so basically, like, can I do it? And I sat with that one, and the first draft. So just to talk to you about process for a second as a creative. So first draft, I kind of like noodled out some thoughts, and one of the things I then texted my editor and I said, you know what I'm having a problem with is this feels like a consumer purchase question. Like somebody's asking that. And I can't figure out how to like plank it back to my stuff. I can't like get the words in my own head, even though I totally like intuitively know it's larger than that. And he goes, well, aren't you saying that how you spend your dollars reflects what you value, and isn't your column about what you value? And I go, oh, okay, that's kind of useful. So then second draft was about me kind of going in that direction. And then here's the thing. I sent it to Paul and I said, I still don't know what it is I'm trying to say. Honest to God. And by that point I had found the song. So I think in songs. So I actually like when I have a sense of what I'm trying to write, I actually also picture a song, which is the weirdest thing. By the way, they're almost all 80 songs. So, which is just the strangest
Not
thing.
a
I don't even
bad
know how to,
genre to be in.
oh my gosh. But I think that's because I grew up on MTV. That I think also in like the video reel of the song. And so in fact, last night I sent you a song that it was about something else, and we'll talk about that later. But I had found that song, Robert Downey Jr. singing the Police song, Driven to Tears. And I was like, so I knew this, like intuitively I was there. And I was like, okay, I want to talk about how does it you value. I still hadn't linked it to Flywheel. So now we're in draft 3. And Paul says, well, I love the song Driven. He goes, is there anything to be played off of Wheel, Collide? He actually like listed like 3 words. And I was like, Flywheel. And so this is why you need friends in your life. And I mean that in like all the like humbling ways that we all learn, right? Like, so as soon as I got to Wheel, I got to Flywheel. And of course you'll remember the book that actually canonized the idea of Flywheel was Good to Great. Mm-hmm. And Good to Great talked about how you basically, as the title suggests, go from good to great. What is that set of energy that goes? But it was also, then I thought, oh, well, actually the reason this woman wants to make this decision is she wants to invest in green so that green grows. And then I was able to make the link, which I hadn't been able to do before that, which was to say, you're also investing in somebody's leadership style. And that person's leadership style will show up on the top cover of Forbes or Fortune, and then your boss will read it. And then your boss is going to bring all that behavior to a theater near you.
Wow. Yeah.
And that, so like third draft, so that's like why someone might want to pay me to do this work. But third draft, because once I got to the flywheel, I was like, it's the flywheel of ick. So here's the thing, right? I have a 2x2 grid that I use as the only known construct. For simplicity, I could actually make it 3x3, but anyway, for simplicity, I keep it 2x2. And I'm basically talking about the relationship of voice to belonging. So you and us. So what is essentially the psychology of it and the sociology of it? I'm bringing both together because I'm saying, as we belong, we become. As we become, we belong. And the interrelationship of those two allows us to build a community construct model. So that one person doesn't need to tell us what the fuck to do, but we can actually enable the capacity, which I talk about as onlyness, right? That capacity only one has. And I was able to link that almost all the books that you and I read and that we've been conditioned on, right, talk about 2 things. the hierarchy of top-down management behavior, if somebody needs to tell everybody else what to do, and the hierarchy of top-dog behavior that says one of us is going to win and go through that turnstile, and who's it going to be? And you and all the work I've studied for so long suggests there is another way, but we have to link not superiority and subjugation, but how do we figure out what is that small voice within us that links us to the world? And then all of a sudden we have a completely different way of relating to each other,
Mm-hmm.
not as under or that, but each of us having an ability to add some value to the world.
And then that becomes a sort of thinking framework and decision making framework for approaching something as seemingly mundane as a purchasing decision, or a maybe as impactful as a hiring decision, or a product decision, or a sales decision, or a partnership decision, or like, I think it's really easy to go into any of these decisions with any number of defaults, and depending on what's conditioning you, the defaults are going to be not only categorically same, but categorically like the side effects, right? The unintended consequences are also going to be same. And so we talk back to like systems, and I had this quote from before that you had written down, that you can't pee in the pool without affecting the entire pool. Which, like, it's visceral, people get it really quickly, but this is all the same. Is like the direction your flywheel is spinning, and the energy and inputs as much as the outputs are going to affect the whole pool, whatever the pool happens to be. And
Well, this is where, I use that image about sort of raindrop hitting the water, and you see these ripple effects. That's why I said the pee. Like, we sort of talk about it like it's happening over there, and I'm like, it's peeing in the pool.
you're in the
It's
pool.
like, how is it not peeing in the pool? And by the way, I don't know how you could possibly think it won't affect you, right? And then it's just a matter of saturation, right? Which is a terrible image, sorry, that I just placed in people's mind. But it's a matter of saturation, and the degree to which we're suffering as a society is because we have let a bunch of people pee in the pool, and now it's fucking awful to be in here.
And we've barely tried to tell them to stop peeing in the pool, and we definitely haven't thought, well, what's allowing people to think that peeing in the pool is an acceptable thing to do in the first place?
So there's work to be done, and why you and I give a damn about it. And this is I the work is all linked, right? So we will not end it in our lifetime, probably, but I'd like us to think about the heritage on which we're building, whether it's Margaret Wheatley or Eleanor, what's her name? The woman who won the Nobel Prize for the Commons. Oh, I'm so sorry for not remembering that name, but we'll tune into it. Even Gandhi talked about the effect of an individual is part of a circle. There are people. Tom Peters was really trying to get to it, although it got put under some really weird marketing kind of language, right? Which is, what is it only you can add? And unfortunately got named a brand called you, but he was really trying to talk to this. So there's a legacy of people you and I are building on, and then now we're building together that we can, start to do that counter programming.
I love it. I love that framing of counter programming. I'm going to be thinking about, I mean, that I have never thought about our work as that, even though I know that is exactly what it is. I mean, you mentioned the Voldemort name, Paul Graham. I can say his name, and it's so funny because like it keeps coming. It's another one of those like patterns that keeps coming up, and I've pointed to people. I'm like, Amy and I have very distinctively built Stacking the Bricks as a place on the internet to counter program
Andreessen world, yeah.
the Andreessen and Paul Graham cult, frankly, the blind followership that has been built, because among them, every time we see a defector, that defector like is someone who's been unplugged from the matrix and goes, this thing I've been promised isn't what I was promised, and perhaps it sucks quite a bit. And once they're in that place, then I think there is an opportunity for, folks need to be open-minded. We've never gone in to try and convince people who don't want to be convinced, but there are enough people who are looking at the stuff going, this is not good, but I don't know what the alternative is. And so I think it's so, it's not just valuable. I think it's important that things like your column, the stuff that we've put out, the stuff that a lot of our students have put out, are there to show up for the people in the world who are also looking around going honk.
Yeah, exactly.
and their honk,
it's not
their honk
followership,
is
it's fellowship. It's
yeah.
and in fact, when you first sent me, which I want to say it was like the first month of the pandemic, and the shelter in home place. So it's been so long, it feels like, I don't know, years ago, right? Because I feel like the level of trauma we've all had to live through. But I remember you sent it to me and I said, well, this isn't the tiny MBA, it's the anti-MBA. And I'm not against MBAs, right? Like, obviously I value education. I've gotten a bunch of it. So it wasn't it. I was like, this is the counter programming book.
Yeah.
Right. Along with, obviously, I recognize counter programming when I see it, because there's a couple of us who are actually really trying to gather together and be like, let's be in fellowship, because we need a different set of voices out here.
What's next for At Work? I know you and Paul have recently come out of a hiatus and took some of that time to sort of regroup your thoughts and look at what's working, what's not. Where are you hoping that things go with the counter programming, the connection to the audience? What's next for that world that you're creating?
What was really interesting, the biggest question that Paul and I were facing with is like, what is the ambition of the project? And I reread every column, I reread people's comments, and I sat there and said, what is it I'm not saying to myself? What is it I'm not saying? Because almost always, like, I have it, but I don't want to say it out loud because it sounds too audacious or something. And I have recognized that because, by the way, most of the world doesn't tell me to go bolder, right? Most of the world tells me to go smaller. So I have to sit there and go, what is it? And Paul and I had a couple bourbon driven conversations. And one of the things,
The best kind.
Seriously, that man and I would not be working together if it were not for those conversations. And here's the thing that he said, what is it you want for these people? And I said, I want them to live it. I want them to internalize it so the next day at work, they can be more fully alive at work. And then I want them to spread it so that they can go, psst, over here. Here's the secret code. We can join the Order of the Phoenix, right? Like, and then we end up creating a group of people that are committed to living this.
That's powerful.
And that's my ambition for people.
I love that. I love it's one thing, and one would argue bold enough to put ideas out in the world and hope that people connect with them. I think it's another, and I think this is just, I hadn't really thought about, but I think a place that you and I connect on a philosophical level, but also a very practical level, is that you got to live it, you got to practice it. Like, this is not a read it, go, that's nice, and then back to whatever way you were doing it before. And to be using this platform and this community that you're aiming to build around the column as a environment for that practice. It's multiple layers of feedback loop. It's ways for you to process these ideas. It's ways for people to process them with you.
And then for them to process the ambition, right, is not only that we're here for them, because certainly I want to show up to that work, but that we can be here for each other.
Yeah, totally.
And
I think
so
that's at the heart
ambition.
of the good stuff. Oh, I love that. That's so good. This was so good. I love talking with you so much.
I enjoyed this too, Alex. Sorry for the little noise that was in the background for a little bit. I muted myself, hopefully that it didn't come through, but some car decided to turn a tree through right outside the window, kind of thing.
We are living in a world where I think the perfect polish of radio broadcast doesn't really mean anything in 2020. We are where we are. We are living where we are living, and we are recording in the same place.
Yeah, right. I enjoyed this, and I'm so excited about the work you're doing, and glad to support it. Glad to, and what I love about us, if I can end with this thought, which I hadn't really thought about until just now. Most of us who are trying to do this counter programming work are still trying to do it by ourselves. It's like you'll see one person doing it and one person doing it. The strength in this is if we can join together. Because that side, by the way, the stormtrooper side, they actually have it pretty fucking well organized.
Yeah.
Our side, we're acting like we're all scattered to the wind, and we got to do some more formation work, as Beyonce would say. And I feel like just this conversation even was a part of that. So I'm excited by that.
Yeah, a little bit of us working in public too. I like that.
Yeah, right.
I like that a
Learning
lot.
together. Love it.
Folks can and should, I'm going to strongly encourage, check out the column. It's awesome. Get subscribed. There's a paid version to support this column to make sure it can continue happening. That is, was it like $60 a year? Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's like $5 a month. That is, for the price of a cup of Starbucks coffee, a weekly column that is, again, not just good ideas, but practical practice and an opportunity to see what I think is some true craft in unpacking the very real problems that we're facing and some new frameworks to build better flywheels in a direction that doesn't just impact our work, but the entire systems that our work is interconnected with. So check that out. It's awesome. If you haven't picked up a copy of the Tiny MBA, Nilofer wrote an incredible foreword that helped connect some of the really critical key dots and even figuring out what this book was and for whom. So for those of you who have read it, who have written back, who have told me that you loved it, thank you. So many people have commented on how much they love the stories that you chose to tell, Nilofer. So I know, but I'm going to say again, it's a big part of what makes this book. So thank you for that. And thank you for spending some time today to hang out. So super nice.
Yeah, really nice. Thanks, Alex.
Cool. How do you feel? All right. That is the recording from the conversation I had just a couple hours ago. Super appreciate how many of you were here through the whole thing. Some great comments in the chat. I saw some folks tweeting about the stream, which I'm super appreciative for. A few new followers. Oh, my mic is almost inaudible. Give me 1 second. Here we go. That should be better. Sorry about that. Yes, we're doing a little bit of live on the fly. Had some technical difficulties earlier, but I still wanted to share this conversation today. Hopefully this volume level is better for folks. If you want to give me a thumbs up in the chat, that would be cool. Better. Great. Fantastic. I had adjusted some things from earlier to make sure I wasn't unintentionally showing up on the stream. And yeah, so that was, yes, Chris, that was a recording. We had everything set up to stream live, and when I went to go stream, I got a weird error that I still don't know how to solve. I'll have to figure that out. Off time, all the testing had worked, whatever. I might just need to reboot my computer, but I had Nilofer for an hour and change. I didn't want to go over. I didn't want to cut our time. So I said, let's just do the recording, and I'll figure out if there's a way for me to share it. And so, yeah, I was able to take that recording, and that was what we got to watch. And the best part is I got to hang out in the chat a little bit more than I would be able to in a live conversation. Downside, of course, I wish Nilofer were here to see the chat. I'm going to let her know how much people appreciated it, some of the parts that were resonant. And Tentman TV, thank you for the follow as well. I want to do more stuff like this. I want to do more conversations. Nick's Mad Science here in the chat. Oh, hey, a subscriber. That's cool. I didn't even know that was a thing I could do. And all of the amazing animations. That was awesome. Dita Von Bleed, thank you for that. Amazing. So what was I saying? I got so distracted by the excitement of the new subscriber. Amazing. Nick's Mad Science, sort of my behind the scenes producer, moderator here in the chat, has helped me set up all the cool stuff that's happening here on the stream. We've got the tools to do stuff that's not just me talking or me writing like we've done in the past. So we're going to have more stuff with guests. I want to start recording, when possible, podcasts here live. Once I figure out what went wrong today, I'll let folks know there. Obviously, the best way to know that something is coming up is to follow here on Twitch and get the notifications when I'm about to go live. What else? Nick and I have also been planning some live Sales Safari, for those of you who know what Sales Safari is. For those of you who don't, that is the sort of research technique that Amy invented, we co-developed, and teach in our main class in 3500. We've got some cool stuff coming up in that world soon. And to get a little bit of practice under our belt and invite you to join along, we're going to be doing some fun. Another subscriber. Unbelievable. This is the best day ever. Cool. Again, I still don't really know what that means, but I really appreciate it. Nick, you've got to teach me more. So we're going to be doing some Sales Safari where what's going to happen is, for instance, Nick will come on the stream with me. We will share a screen and we'll pick an audience, his audience perhaps, or one of yours. We'll go on the internet. We're going to go find those people. We're going to do some research. And we're going to show you how we take notes and do that research. That might not sound exciting, but I promise you it is. You're going to have to come and check things out when we do that. I've also got third subscriber. What is going on here? Amazing. I want to be clear, like, we didn't launch this channel to make money, so the fact that you want to support, it means an absolute ton. So thank you. Keep it coming. But our goal is to, I would say, twofold. I really want to build a little bit of a community here in the I want to build a little bit of a community here in the chat, so you start recognizing each other, get to know what's going on, be able to help each other. I want to do some like group problem solving in people's businesses and work and things like that soon. What else? And then the other thing is this is a place where I feel like I get to experiment and try things out. So like the recent copywriting streams, if you go back into the recent videos, and awesome, I love this. So much fun happening right now. All these extra animations and sounds, and I think there's a hype train. I don't know what that is either. Anyone who's stuck around this far is getting a show. That is super fun. Really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you. If you haven't yet, check the videos that are pre-recorded, the last couple. There are a few more. I'm going to figure out exactly where I want to put them. Maybe on our YouTube channel. But I've been doing some live copywriting sessions where I'm either working on an article or sales copy, things like that. And they've been actually really valuable for me. I enjoy doing it, but most importantly, the ability to think through a process out loud has actually been helpful for me. So, writing an article, I do it day in and day out, but I don't necessarily stop to think, why am I doing what I'm doing? And so forcing myself to think through it and articulate it is, makes things better. Give Alex as much stuff as you can in a short period. I see. So the hype train encourages more points, more internet points. I've got a lot to learn about Twitch. So I hope y'all will help me out with that. But I am having a lot of fun here. I'm having a lot of fun with you. I super appreciate all of you hanging out today and every time. I saw the question from Tentman about a schedule for, the Sales Safari. We don't have a schedule for that. The last few weeks have been kind of hectic. I don't know if you noticed, but the world's a little crazy right now. I'm trying to keep my cool. So there's going to be a mix of scheduled and sort of impromptu stuff. The closest thing to a scheduled yes, Dina Von Bleed. I've got a lot to learn. The closest thing to a scheduled thing I've got right now is on Sunday evenings Eastern time. So I've been going live around 7 o'clock Eastern or so to do a copywriting session. Those have been fairly consistent, so you can check that out. One of the things that we want to do is have a place on Stacking the Bricks where you can sign up to be notified specifically about streams coming up without having to get our whole mailing list or separate from our whole mailing list. Still figuring that out, working with Thomas on something along those lines. But yeah, this is good. This was good. I'm glad that we were able to make this happen. I'm glad that Nilofer's conversation was so valuable for so many people. She's wonderful. Please go check out her column if you can, if you have the means to pay for a subscription. And I'm not saying this because I think you should pay for her subscription. I think it's worth every freaking penny. That's why her and her editor Paul are doing great work. We actually have a promotion for their paid subscribers. Are going to be getting a copy of the Tiny MBA coming up this weekend. So maybe an opportunity to jump on board there. Check out her stuff. Follow her on Twitter at Nilofer. Her book that she talked about most in this stream was The Power of Onlyness. You can get that everywhere books are sold. It's really good. There is a chapter in it about me and the origin story of Indie Hall, which is a little if you don't know what's coming, might be a little bit surprising, but obviously she told a little bit of that story. But the book is fascinating. It's really, really some amazing stories and case studies of people doing incredible community building work, as well as sort of personal building work. I think that's kind of the beautiful Venn diagram of Nilofer's work, and why I find it so interesting. It is the combination of working on the self, but doing it in a way that makes you more connected with other people, and that's kind of my jam. What else? I don't know. It's Friday. I hope folks have anybody got plans for the weekend? You know, we can do that. It's almost happy hour here. While the hype train is going, you can tell me what in the chat what kind of plans you have for the weekend. Is anybody streaming this weekend? If you want to drop a little mention of what you're going to be doing, if it's here on Twitch or otherwise. Here in Philadelphia, it looks like the weather's going to be nice, so I'm planning on getting outside this weekend for a change, because the weather has not been super nice, or at least not consistently. Maybe go sit in a park, drink some whiskey. Sounds like a good plan. But I'm curious what other folks are up to. Last but not least, I don't know. Oh, Vince. I saw Vince was here earlier. Vince, if you are still here, I want to give a little plug for Vince, who I met through the Party Corgi Discord. Party Corgi Discord is tops Chris Biscardi and many other corgis here in the room. I received a level 1 hype train emote. So many exciting things going on. See, Nick is going to be doing some hackery with the Power Glove. Chris is going to be working for a deadline early next week. Good luck with your deadline, Chris. Dita Von Bleed getting chilly up north, getting into baking and cooking mode. Oh yeah, that's right. Very cool. Very, very cool. So I was about to give a little plug for Vince, if Vince is still in the chat. Vince sent me, right after I released the Tiny MBA, while he was waiting for his... while Vince was waiting for the print copy of the Tiny MBA, posted this amazing video of like spray painting some stuff and then laser etching the illustrations from the Tiny MBA onto it. Things like this. This is a coaster, a ceramic coaster that says Ruthless Generosity. It is extremely out of focus. There you go. So Vince made more stuff. He sent it to me. I've got more of it here. There's this cool laser etched audience building is really just earning trust at scale. It's like a what is this? Like a plastic mold of an iPhone, like a cell phone. Couple of those. This one is like almost like a computer screen. It says bigger isn't better, better is better. These are just the coolest. And Vince was super generous and sent them to me. I think we're gonna do some sort of giveaway with these, because I just think they're the neatest thing in the world. So keep your eyes peeled, probably on Twitter for that. We might do a giveaway on Twitter, might do a giveaway here on Twitch. We'll see how that goes. We had a very successful giveaway with So Splush on Twitter. Some of you might know. Where is Kelly? There she go. Kelly Mahoney. So Splush on Twitter is a super talented illustrator. She's these really cute. I've got all the goodies nearby. She's these really cute stickers, like this little R, like annual recurring revenue, R pirate sticker. So we did a giveaway where folks could, like or retweet a tweet from her, and then get entered into a giveaway. We gave away 5 print copies of the Tiny MBA. Sent those out earlier this week with the stickers as well. So every winner got a free copy of the book and one of these little pirate stickers. So more things like that, maybe with Vince's goodies. If you have some stuff that folks that like the Tiny MBA might be into, maybe we can team up and do a fun little giveaway of some sort. Nick said the Stream Elements supports giveaways. Well, we will have to figure out how that works. That sounds very fun. Tent Man, trying to think through career decisions and streaming next week. Ooh, career decisions. Well, here's the deal. I'm going to have to take off for now, but I'm very interested in those career decisions. So if you are interested in sharing any of those things with me, either on Twitter at Alex Hillman, or if you want to email me, if you've got thoughts or questions and just want a sounding board. Like I said in the conversation with Nilofer, I love getting those emails. I might not have an answer for you. I might not have an answer you like. But if you're looking for that sounding board, happy to listen. And maybe if the question is something that we think would be helpful for other people, we can talk about it here on the stream, anonymously, or with them knowing exactly who you are, or if them knowing that you are Tentman TV, however anonymous you'd like to be. But yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to sign off for the weekend. I hope you all have an awesome one. Thank you again for being here. And yeah, Tent Man, sounds interesting. You tell me. Alex at tiny.mba is my email, so shoot me a message there, or like I said, on Twitter. Either which way, I'll catch y'all next week. Later.